Welcome to another edition of Northern Heat. And this week, our special guest, Kent Murphy. Kent, how are you today?
Bob, I'm wonderful. I'm in Bathurst. God's country.
God's country. You're absolutely right. We've tried to tell people that all the time, that comes from the southern part of the province, but they don't believe us, but that's great. You're with Altantic Growth Solutions, and you're the CEO of Altantic Growth Solutions, and we've been working together for about 6 or 8 months now.
Yes.
And so tell us a little bit about what Altantic Growth Solutions does.
Well, we're based in Fredericton, New Brunswick, and we help small, medium-sized businesses all the way up to enterprise companies execute sales, whether it be through lead generation, business development. We help our clients identify and build sales pipelines for their salespeople so they can grow their revenues and meet their targets, their revenue targets. If they're in a scale-up growing company or an enterprise company who is looking to get into new markets and target some of the biggest brands in the world, and they just need a little extra focus, a little bit more help with their process, and just the rigor and rhythm it takes every day to successfully sell. That's what we do for them, based out of Fredericton. We have a team of 20.
Well, that's excellent. And when we met 8 months ago, it was to look at how you could help Thermalwood Canada into this. And the one thing, because I'm an engineer, so process and stuff is very important.
Yeah.
You brought that up in just now, but you brought it up when we first met, when you went through, you talked about the process of sales. And so if you think about it in that way, and I'm going to ask you a question that's tied in here to New Brunswick.
Sure.
How can a sales process actually help New Brunswickers get ourselves on the map? Because we're still not on there.
Yeah.
A lot of people still don't know where New Brunswick is. I think that is getting better all the time.
Yeah.
But how does a sales process actually help New Brunswickers get on the map?
Well, speaking of maps, I used a GPS because I came from Fredericton through Moncton on to Bathurst. And it was the first time I've come to Bathurst through Moncton. I needed my GPS. I think of the sales process as a GPS. It helps you find the most efficient route from a prospect to a customer, or a first contact with a prospect to a purchase order. And without a process, without a sales process, it just makes it very difficult. And difficult means longer sales cycles, right? Where you're wondering where that prospect went that you spoke to and you thought there would be an opportunity, to wondering when they're going to get back to you. Without a process, you spend a lot of time driving around not knowing which direction, or identifying where you're going, and you need to be more efficient at that. And the process allows you to see what it takes to be successful in sales, those best practices, those milestones. I'm sure when your new customers come on site and see your facility, knowing that coming and seeing our facility and seeing our process firsthand is a major milestone in building trust and getting that first order from them. Well, is a site visit a high priority activity in terms of getting your future customers on site? Because when you've done that, the probability that they're going to be a long-term valuable customer increases significantly.
Yeah.
So it's understanding in my sales process, what are the key milestones? What do I need to be doing day in, day out to be successful, to shorten the duration of the sales cycle from weeks to days, to becoming be able to share that and coach up other people in the organization when we're growing and we're bringing new people into our organization who have the responsibility for sales. Now you can actually show them the process, and you can learn best practices, and you can harness those best practices to just improve the overall efficiency of the organization. So I think process is really key, and I love the fact that you come from an engineering background. You get it, and I think in sales you can't be successful without one.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because all the way through that, there are certain things that in certain business we just take for granted.
Oh yeah.
We just assume we can sell.
Yeah.
And that it's just going to actually happen. But till I met you and went through it, there was a whole bunch of light switches that went on things that you needed to be able to think about.
Yeah.
I just didn't think about those things. Weren't important. Like we just did a lunch and learn with architects.
Yes.
And you were listening into what was going on, and all I was doing was going through a technical session to get them better equipped so that they would be able to set the standards and specifications properly.
Yes.
And there was one lady asked a bunch of questions. Now, I hadn't even thought about it. You turned around after it was all over and gave me some feedback, and you said, that one lady that asked questions. Now, tie that into going and connecting with her on LinkedIn, then going back and sending her a message about saying, great questions. Those are things I hadn't even thought about.
Yeah.
And it's all part of the process.
Yeah. There's a huge psychology that we underestimate, right? That power of influence. People love to hear their name spoken. People love the gesture of reaching out to them after a session. And when a keynote speaker reaches out to an individual after the meeting because, hey, I really appreciated your engagement. You asked some really good questions, and getting their feedback. What did they take away? That will be a real indicator to you. Are they a likely champion in that organization to do business with you in the future? Not everybody's going to do business with you. But if you can identify and look for signals that lead you to a potential customer faster through identifying it, following up, and then assessing whether there's a real opportunity there by just simply asking questions, these things, you just put them to memory and you just make them automatic. And I tell you what, you'll spend more time talking to people who are going to buy from you than people are just going to kick tires and waste your time.
Yeah, but the big thing there that resonated most with me is speeding up the process, because we're all in business to make money, because if we don't make money, we can't make the wheels turn. And if the wheels don't turn, the business stops.
Yes.
And so the fastest that you can turn that process, the easier it greases the wheels, right?
Absolutely.
As you go through. So there's a lot to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what your organization does.
We do that. And when I first met you, I got to admit, I didn't know. I mean, I'm from New Brunswick, and of course the forest is all around us, but the value add that you do, who your buyer is, and how that buyer uses your products in growing their business for their customers. For me, I learned your business through asking you about, describe your ideal customer. Who's your ideal customer? And when you started listing off who you're working with, it's very impressive. But I could see a certain pattern, certain attributes or characteristics about your best customers today, which helped me formulate a profile of your ideal future customer. And when you develop your ideal future customer profile, then you can start to look at the tools that are out there to help you identify, are there 50 other companies like your number one customer? And whether you go to Google or you're using LinkedIn or you're using ZoomInfo or other robust databases out there, it is very easy to start to identify other companies that look like your best customers who are not doing business with you today, that you can begin the process of making sure they know who you are. Because if your best customers are buying from you and you can identify 50 other organizations that look just like them, there's a good chance they're probably going to buy from you too when they know who you are. Yeah. And you use the reference of a map, right? Putting New Brunswick on the map. A map's about getting from point A to point B. A map's about, this is where I am and this is where I want to go. And in sales, you need to know where you want to go, and where you want to go to is your ideal customer, future customer. And you have to have a profile. You need to know what they look like, where they're located, and to be able to actually execute successfully.
And that was another thing that I learned as we went through that whole process, because identifying those right customers. But when we did start off, we started off with a big, wide range.
Oh, yeah.
There's this one, this one, this one, this one. And a lot of it was also because I really didn't have a really good focus on where it could be. Now I understand the process. I can narrow that in a lot more. But we started off, and then we finally ended up finding that one customer that was the right one. And then all of a sudden it just went.
Absolutely. And, in sales, it's step one to step two. When you get to step two, or point A to point B, you see, what did we learn? And we had a couple of really interesting conversations early on that started to validate to us that ideal customer profile in that particular market, the conversations that came back to us through our outreach validated we were going in the right direction with a certain profile. And then what we decided to do together collectively was let's continue, where we're having some success right now. Let's see if that same message that we've crafted resonates, and we continued in that direction, and it just continued to open up. We took our learnings. We took a little bit of a leap of faith from what we knew, but the key part, and I want to go back to this as well, is it was really important when you're going into new markets that you develop a really compelling value proposition.
Mm-hmm.
And that value proposition described who Thermalwood Canada was, who we work with, how we help, and what we feel the end result will be for the person we're talking to if they're now considering. You have to remember, a prospect goes through, if you were to sit down, and your viewers who are listening right now, if they went through that exercise and identified who their top 5 customers are today, and then said, okay, are there 50 other companies in North America, in the world, that resemble those businesses today? How are we going to reach out to them? What are we going to say to them? The chances are, the leaders in those organizations, the people who are going to make the decisions to buy your product or service, they're going to want to know who you work with. They're going to want to see use cases of your success at home. So those early success stories should form your marketing, should form your digital content, should form your use cases and videos and those types of things. Because as you're reaching outside of the borders of New Brunswick, you've got to build trust virtually, essentially. And if you're able to show them that you've worked with somebody in North America that looks like them based on their profile and the profile of your ideal customer, and the success and results that you've been able to generate for your local customers, they start to see themselves receiving that benefit too. And they're going to be more interested in hearing more about what you can do for them based on those use cases and successes at home. Then they're going to want to come visit.
Yeah.
They're going to want to know more. And that is really important to create a value proposition that's relevant. It has to, the what's in it for me. It's very important that when you're reaching out to people, the message has to be really on point, because, your future customers are being prospected all the time. They're running into companies that are bringing new products to you.
And what makes you different than them?
What makes you different than them? Are you better? Are you different? Are you unique? Or maybe you're a low-cost provider, but good quality. And you really have to get that message on point, because otherwise that message will never be received and you'll just be considered ordinary.
Well, through this whole exercise, Kent, I want to thank you very much, because it was educational, okay? My whole objective at the beginning was to put an export readiness plan for the eastern seaboard of the United States. And so that's helped me do all the research. Well, I should say you do all the research, but it's got all that information to put it together. So we were able to, it was an educational process. It was a better understanding of what the process. At the same time, we were able to physically get some things into place. And the big thing for me is that this expertise came from New Brunswick.
Absolutely.
Like, you live in New Brunswick.
Yeah.
And we sometimes overlook our province internally, and we feel that we have to go get expertise outside.
Yes.
And we don't have to do that.
Absolutely not.
We've got it here. Yeah. And so, the objective of today is to let people know that we have the expertise in our own province. We don't have to go outside to be able to get it done.
Right on.
And so, again, I want to thank you very much for all the help you've done for our business. And I think that there's opportunities there for you to help others in our area and in the Chaleur area. So if people would be interested in talking to you and find out more about this, how would they get a hold of you?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn.
Okay.
So Kent Murphy at LinkedIn, Atlantic Growth Solutions, or they can simply email me at kent@atlanticgrowthsolutions.com.
All right. And we'll make sure that that's on the bottom of our post.
Appreciate that, Bob.
Good. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
So there we are. Another edition of Northern Heat for this week. The place you come to listen to the stories that haven't been discovered yet.
There we go.